Hey everyone, welcome back to AFTV. Now today's video is a look back. It's actually the start of a mini series. It's actually a little look back at some of the players and what they've kind of done for this team over those first 14 games, how they've played a part in what's been an amazing start to the Premier League season for Arsenal, and why we're hopeful it can continue and why they've been so important. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the series itself. Before I do, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who watched Behind the Numbers. Thank you to everyone who commented as well, liked the video, everyone who gave their thoughts, their feedback, and some very positive comments. Me and Turkish really appreciated it. And this kind of mini series is inspired in the same way that video was, which was Behind the Numbers was to really look at where the club has gone right and why it's left us in a position with 12 wins out of 14 games, top of the table, 5 clear, going into the World Cup, which everyone's enjoying at the moment. And I think having looked at the club and what the team have done well, it's only right we look at some of the individual players, and we've got a first 11 here on the tactical pad. But it's just to look at some of these individual players. There'll be 5 episodes in this mini-series, and it's not the 5 best players we're looking at. I really want to stress that because, you know, there have been some outstanding players. I mean, I don't think anyone has actually not pulled their weight, or you can't look at anyone in that starting 11, plus in the squad, the likes of Tierney and Tomiyasu have come in, a few others as well. You can't look at them and say that they haven't been brilliant in their own way and contributed massively to this team. But there are 5 players in particular that I believe have had, they're either new signings or they've had a change of role or they're coming to the team in a slightly different way. And I think it's worth talking about them because they're very fascinating from a tactical perspective. And today we're going to start with none other than Ben White. Benjamin White. He was a £50 million signing, wasn't he? Came in from Brighton in the summer of 2021. Arsenal hadn't had a good season. The scrutiny was higher than ever on Mikel Arteta. He had a tricky first game against who was it? It was Brentford, that was it, away from home. We lost 2-0. He was playing centre-back in that game, had a really rough ride with Ivan Toney, and essentially he kind of grew out of that. I actually thought he had a really good first season for Arsenal. Because he came with 50 million, there's a lot of pressure on him, there's a lot of eyes on him. And now what we've seen is with the emergence of Saliba and a situation in which there was a little bit of a space at right back that needed filling, Ben White stepped up into it and he's been absolutely superb, and I want to analyse a little bit why and what his role is in this team. Now, first and foremost, why has it got to a situation in which Ben White's playing a right back? I'm getting ahead of myself. It is because Tomiyasu wasn't fit during, well, a lot of the end of last season, but also during pre-season, nor was Cedric, I believe. So Ben White was looked at as the person to fill in there. You got Saliba, who came with a massive reputation, so it was an opportunity to see him alongside Gabriel, and both of them absolutely thrived since coming to the team in pre-season. We saw a lot in kind of the earlier games. Well, I don't think we did in the Everton game. I believe Cedric did start that one, but in the Chelsea game, for example, then Sevilla, Ben White started right back and played really well in those games. It then sees him starting at Crystal Palace at right back and having a really good game against Wilfried Zaha and contributing to what was the start of a really good run and a really good start to the season for Arsenal. So why White? Why was White seen as the player to fill into that role? We've seen Mikel Arteta opt to use Ben White at right back a couple of times last season. I think of Burnley at home, it didn't really work. A lot of criticism for Ben White in that role. People feeling, look, he's not a right back, he's at least a ball-playing centre-back. Now, as I mentioned, Tomiyasu and Cedric not being available meant that we looked at Ben White, who's made 31 appearances as a right back in his career, 202 as a centre-back, which is to be expected. He is primarily a centre-back, 4 at left-back, and 13 as a defensive midfielder as well. Now, the fact that he's played right-back and central midfielder is really important to know and understand for later in the video where we break down his role and what he has to do, not just in the position at right back, but in this role that Arteta deploys him in. So a lot of those midfield appearances, for example, came for Leeds and Brighton, not at Arsenal. A lot of those right back appearances, yes, at Arsenal, but he had played there for Brighton. And actually, mainly, even when he was playing as a centre back for Brighton, he was playing on the right back 3, which involves stepping up a little bit more, covering wide areas a lot. So this is a player, Ben White, who's had a lot of experience in these kind of areas. You know, wide right defending, maybe coming inside a little bit as part of a narrow back 3. He's had to do a little bit of everything. And when we see him starting with Gabriel at centre-back last season, he was always the one that I felt intercepted a bit more, got in front of his man, stepped forward, tried to maybe win the ball a little bit earlier. He had great recovery pace as well, but he was also the one who could cover for Gabriel when Gabriel went for the headers. But the other thing that I really liked about Ben White, we saw it a lot, especially the beginning of last season, was how often he'd get the ball and drive into midfield, how comfortable he is on the ball, how often it was his passing that got us out into tricky situations, how often he was able to get us from one end of the pitch to the other because of his distribution. So with that alone, you kind of felt that Ben White had a little bit more to offer than just being a centre-back at times. And actually when we signed him, we touched on it in a breakdown video we did, a Transfer Daily Extra, where we said that Arteta might look at him to play kind of multiple roles in this Arsenal team, and that is exactly what we're seeing at the moment. When you compare him to Gabriel, I think this graphic tells you a lot as well. In terms of dribbles attempted per game last season, Ben White had a lot more, 0.63 to Gabriel's 0.12. In terms of progressive passes per game, a lot, well, actually not a lot more, but it was a lot, 2.91 to Gabriel's 2.5. Gabriel's a much better distributor of a football than he gets given credit for, but we're not going to talk about Gabriel today. In terms of tackles in the attacking third, 0.19 per game to Gabriel's 0.06. In terms of interceptions per game, 1.13 to Gabriel's 0.38. So there you go. There is Ben White showing intercepting. What's that part of? That's part of a good press. That's part of being on the front foot and getting ahead of your man, winning the ball before the opposition gets it. Things like dribbling attempted and progressive passes, they're all good things that you associate with players that can play higher up the pitch. So, what is his role in this team and how does it look in the setup? We mentioned him being a right back, but actually he does a lot of his good work in attacking areas of the pitch. That's what we've got to talk about. Now, first and foremost, when Zinchenko is fit, because he's not always, we've seen Tomiyasu and Tierney have to play sometimes, it allows Arsenal to do this, which is essentially, if we get the wingers right up the pitch, let's lock this and put it away for a sec. We get Odegaard and Xhaka go up and support. That's your lane of five. How often has Graham mentioned that on Tactical Insight? And then it allows Zinchenko just to come inside and Arsenal to build with a back three. Essentially, it's a 3-2-5. White, having played as a centre-back, is able to cover in those areas very comfortably. He's played in a back 3-4 for Brighton, as I mentioned, and it allows Zinchenko and Partey to control midfield. Xhaka to make those box-to-box runs he's been making. We are going to talk about that as a little spoiler for a future episode in this mini-series. And Odegaard to get forward and support Saka as well. But that's the first function. If Zinchenko's there, that helps us with build-up, that helps us get control of the ball, that helps us go to places like Stamford Bridge like we did and just impose our football on the opposition. There's another function to this, and we saw it primarily. Take the goal, for example, we scored against Nottingham Forest, that opening goal when we scored against Forest, Martinelli, and it was Tomiyasu who won it. Part of a shield that the three sit in front of a two, and I'm going to illustrate it here. So if we get everyone a bit higher up the pitch, like this, there we go, let's get Xhaka a little bit more forward. Partey's there, and then this is the shield I'm talking about. Now, what could we do here, just to illustrate it a little bit better? Boom. Partey, White, Zinchenko, it's been Tomiyasu before. When these five are enjoying their football, they're playing, they're being creative, Xhaka's running in beyond sometimes, Martinelli's coming inside, whatever it is they might be doing, Martinelli doesn't want to move, there we go. Often to maintain a press, and we've seen Guardiola do this before with Fabian Delph, Kyle Walker, the three will sit to protect the two so that when the ball comes out, they can win it and they can reignite the attack. As I mentioned, that Forest goal is the best example that I can think of at the moment. But it's also part of maintaining possession, build up. It's part of having a control in this area of the pitch. So we've mentioned two roles for Ben White so far. One in the back three to help distribute and start the build up. Another to help maintain attacks in the final third on the press. And then there's a third. Let's get rid of this. It's when Saka has the ball here, he's committing his man, and then Ben White just goes to that overlap there. Very traditional, or let's say the kind of right back we've been seeing over the last 15 years. Overlapping, getting beyond, trying to create chances, trying to put the ball across goal for opposition. We've seen that in the goal against Bournemouth when he overlapped Saka, cut it across Jesus with a touch into Odegaard. Odegaard finishes. It was brilliant. We saw it at Southampton as well. I was at that game. Again, Saka, he's done really well to spin his defender or get around him. White's overlapped, put it in for Granit Xhaka at the edge of the penalty area, who swept it away with his right foot. Brilliant finish. Ben White's had to do a lot of different roles in one team. And the reason that's so difficult to do is because sometimes you have right backs that just stretch the pitch and get up and down. Sometimes you've got right backs that sit inside They control the game. He's having to do a little bit of everything. He's having to be superb defensively for Arsenal, but he's also having to be almost a trump card attacking outlet sometimes. Against Tottenham in the first half, we played okay, we were doing well. But in the second half, you start to see Ben White overlap a lot more and start to get the ball into the box and start to cause problems. He's having to be lots of different players in one match, and that is why it's such a credit to him quite how well he is playing for Arsenal right now. Let me go through some of the numbers that kind of just might illustrate quite how well he's doing. Now I'm going to give you the percentile rankings from FBref. What does that mean, percentile rankings? It means the closer you are to 99, 99 being basically you're in the top 1%. It's basically the closer to 100, closer to 99 you are, the better you are in terms of your ranking amongst all other fullbacks in the Premier League. That is what we're judging Ben White on here. Now, if you're looking at tackles in the defensive third, his percentile rankings is only 24 because, again, he doesn't do a lot of his defensive work in that defensive third. But when you get to the middle third, 97 percentile and 69 percentile for the tackles in the attacking third. A lot more of his work done in the middle and attacking areas of the pitch. That middle third in particular highlights what we were saying here about being the shield, about doing a lot of his defensive work in this area here and allowing Arsenal to control, win possession back and sustain attacks, as we mentioned. He's also contested and tackled many dribblers, is in the 83rd percentile for that. Again, showing he's on the front foot, willing to engage, willing to try and win that ball early and take his defensive game to attacking players. Now, in terms of some of the stats that highlight what he's been doing as a deep line playmaker, in terms of passes received, he's in the 87th percentile. In terms of passes completed, in the 85th percentile. In terms of medium passes completed, in the 94th. In terms of passes into the final third, 97th. I mean, that tells you, again, he's in the top 3% for passes into the final third. That's how important he's been as a distributor and a part of Arsenal's control in these games. In terms of progressive passes as well, he's in the 90th percentile. As an overlapping fullback, some of the things that will tell you what he's doing there. In terms of goal creating actions, he's in the 92nd percentile. Again, top 8% for goal creating fullbacks, I guess is the way you'd put it. 78th percentile for expected assists, 64th for key passes. 64th percentile and 52nd for crosses into the penalty area. So again, some of those numbers looking really, really impressive as someone who's got to offer something going forward, being creative outlet, being decisive in the final third. One of the players that can actually be really key to us getting a goal. Now, what we want to do is compare this to other fullbacks in the Premier League. Now, you're probably wondering, where's Reece James? He's played as a wing-back a lot, so I didn't really feel it was a fair comparison. Whereas John Stones only had a handful of games, I think 6 appearances at right-back for City this year, 4 at centre-back, so I didn't want the numbers to be skewed. So I've got Dalot, and I've got Diogo Dalot from Man United, I've got Trent Alexander-Arnold here, and I just want to compare some of those numbers to some of theirs. And the point I'm trying to make here is to illustrate how complete a full-back Ben White is and has been for Arsenal this season in terms of the amount he actually does, and where other players might have to sacrifice certain elements of their game to be very good at others. Here's what I mean. So we're going to tackles into the middle third. Ben White comes out comfortably on top in the 97th percentile, with Dalot 22nd, Trent 6th. Tackles in the attacking third, again 69 to 15 for Dalot, 57 for Trent, which is much higher than his tackles in the middle third. Clearly likes to do a lot of defending right at the top of the pitch. And in terms of dribblers tackled as well, he has got the best there. So Ben White, again, doing those defensive numbers for a fullback that gets high up the pitch, very, very well, better than Dalot and Trent. Now, I know what some people are going to say before I go into the rest of the numbers. You can cherry pick some of them. You can just go with what looks good or whatever. But I'm trying to go for specific stats that would illustrate a player that does a lot of his defensive work up the pitch, but is also a creative outlet for the team, as Dalot and Trent have been for their sides. We know that for sure. In terms of passes received, again, only Trent does better than White, but not a lot in it. In terms of passes completed, again, Trent does better, but not a lot in it. Dalot falling behind, but look how much better Dalot's numbers are in that area already, in the sort of attacking distribution phase of the game, as opposed to the defensive work, which I suppose he's not as relied on, but according to Man United fans, he's improved a lot on as well. Medium passes completed, again, not a lot in it there. Passing to final third, not a lot in it there, but again, he comes out on top as he did with the medium passes completed and progressive passes. Trent comes out on top. We know Trent, again, loves that ball over the top, loves to get forward, loves to be creative. White as well with his numbers, looking pretty impressive and at least competing with Trent's in that attacking phase. And we see with goal creating actions as well, more for White, but again, that obviously, it's important that the other player puts in the back of the net, so that skews it slightly, but yeah, White doing very well there. Expected assists, Trent comes out on top, still impressive numbers for White. Key passes, Trent comes out on top and crosses into the penalty area. Again, Dalot and Trent do better in those areas, but it's hardly a poor showing from Ben White. So what I'm trying to say here, the whole message is Ben White has been massive for Mikel Arteta for multiple reasons. A, because he's been able to just slot into that right back role, do it like it was nothing. He's adapted so well on the defensive side of the game when Arsenal have to drop deep and dig in. He's able to do that as well. He's able to be a part of a back three that distribute. He's able to be a part of that shield in front of the two that are able to sustain attacks for Arsenal. And when Arsenal need that sixth lane of attack, when they need just that other something a little bit more unpredictable, something different, he's more than happy to overlap Saka and actually create chances and create goals, as we've seen him do already in the opening 14 games of this season. How he's managing to be a solid defensive outlet, more than solid, very good defense. Think of some of the blocks he's made this season, Fulham, Forest as well. How he's managed to be a massive defensive outlet whilst being a massive distributor and part of our playmaking core in midfield, and be a decisive fullback in the final third is unbelievable. Massive credit to Ben White. What a season he's having. He's with England at the moment. He's not getting his game time because Southgate's gone with other options, but make no mistake about it, he has been absolutely one of the best players in the Premier League this season, and huge credit to him. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed this. This is episode 1 of a mini-series of 5. Do I want to spoil what the next one's about? No, I'll surprise you. What I will, I'll give you a little clue. We've got 2 more defenders and then a midfielder and a forward to come. We'll talk about them a little bit later. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the like button, guys. Let us know what you make of the show, what more you'd like to see, what else you'd like to see covered, and also what else you'd like to see during this World Cup period on AFTV. As you can see, the Christmas merch is out. Go check it out, aftvstore.com. The link is in the description below, so you can celebrate Christmas in the Gooner way. All right, guys, we'll leave it there. Big thank you for joining us. Catch you on the next one.
Shop for AFTV merch at shop.aftv.co.uk. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, and Twitch. We've got content for every platform, so check it out.